Good morning, fourth graders. This morning I want to share to you one of my absolute favorite books. I received this book and read this book for the first time when I first began teaching at my very first student teaching placement. And this story has stuck with me through and through since then. And you've seen it all year long sitting on our prayer table. This story is called The Tale of the Three Trees, and it's a traditional folk tale, and it's retold by Angela Elwell Hunt and illustrated by Tim Jong. Before we get started, I want you to think this morning about dreams that you have for yourself. This story is all about dreams of what one day we will become. And I think it's important that as we reflect in our time that we, have been apart and we haven't been together as much as we'd like to be, even though we're still connected. We've had a lot more time to think. So I want you to think, what are your dreams? What are your hopes? Because even though, at some time, they might not feel like they will come true, they will. Let's read and find out. Okay, so here we go. The Tale of the Three Trees. And you'll notice in the background, I tried to sit this morning so that you could see my tree that's almost in full bloom. I think in a week it will be. The Tale of the Three Trees. From generations, the tale of the three trees has been handed down from parents to children, retold in churches at Christmas and Easter, and even set to music and sung. As is often true of folk tales, the originator is unknown. To this person, I am deeply grateful. Aiden, can you say hi? I'll see you in a little bit. Thank you for helping with the gardening. Once upon a mountaintop, three little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars twinkling like diamonds above him. I want to hold treasure, he said. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I will be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world. The second little tree looked out at the small stream trickling by on its way to the ocean. I want to be a strong sailing ship, he said. I want to travel mighty waters and carry powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world. And the third tree looked down into the valley below, where busy men and busy women worked in a busy town. I don't want to leave this mountaintop at all, she said. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I will be the tallest tree in the world. So they've all got some dreams. Years passed, the rains came, the sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. And one day, three woodcutters climbed the mountain. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful. It is perfect for me." And with a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell. And now I shall be made into a beautiful chest, thought the first tree. I shall hold wonderful treasure. And the second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong. It will be perfect for me." And with a swoop of its shining axe, the second tree fell. Now I shall sail mighty waters, thought the second tree. I shall be a strong ship fit for kings. The third tree felt her heart sink when the last woodcutter looked her way. She stood straight and tall and pointed to heaven. She pointed bravely. But the woodcutter never even looked up. "Any kind of tree will do for me," he muttered. And with a swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought him to the carpenter's shop, But the busy carpenter was not thinking about treasure chests. Instead, his work-worn hands fashioned the tree into a feed box for animals. And the once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or filled with treasure. He was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry farm animals. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took him to a shipyard. But no mighty sailing ships were being made that day. Instead, the once strong tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat. Too small and too weak to sail an ocean or even a river, he was taken to a little lake. And every day he brought in loads of dead, smelly fish. The third tree was confused when the woodcutter cut her into strong beams and left her in a lumber yard. What happened? The once tall tree wondered. All I ever wanted to do was to stay on the mountaintop and point to God. Many days and nights passed, and the three trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby into the feed box. I wish I could make a cradle for him, her husband whispered. The mother squeezed his hand and smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and sturdy wood. This manger is beautiful, she said, and suddenly the first tree knew he was holding the greatest treasure in the world. One evening, a tired traveler and his friends crowded into the old fishing boat, and the traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out onto the lake. Soon, a thundering and thrashing storm arose. The little tree shuddered. He knew he did not have enough strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and rain. A tired man awakened. He stood, stretched out his hand and said, "Peace." And the storm stopped as quickly as it had begun. And suddenly, that second tree knew he was carrying the King of heaven and earth. And one Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were yanked from the forgotten woodpile. She flinched as she was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. She shuddered when soldiers nailed a man's hands to her. She felt ugly and harsh and cruel. For what did she become? But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose and the earth trembled with joy beneath her, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. It had made the first tree beautiful, and it had made that second tree strong. And every single time people thought of the third tree, they would think of God. See, sometimes we just have to trust in God, because that little tree knew that that was better than being the tallest tree in the world. Believe in your dreams, fourth graders, and I wish you a very, very peaceful Holy Week. I love ya.